You're listening to the Digital Deep Dive, where we tackle the newest trends, strategies, and pain points shaping growth across the digital landscape. From Amazon and D2C to international expansion, join our host and e-commerce leaders across multiple industries for in-depth discussions on how to maximize your brands in the digital arena. Now, here's your host, Aaron Conant.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Digital Deep Dive podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Conant, and today we are going to do a deep dive into content. And I know it's one of those things that seems like we keep coming back to over and over and over again. But I mean, the reality is it's the basic building block that we all need to start with. I guess right behind inventory, maybe. Anyways, longtime friend, Chris Perry over at First Mover. Man, we've known each other since before I kicked this off, and I think before you kicked off First Mover. This has been a fun journey, my friend.
No, Aaron, I'm excited to be back. I can't believe we talked about our Omnigeddon like trends for 2024.
Oh, right.
It feels like almost a whole year ago. I can't believe so much has happened since, but excited to be back to talk about, next level content.
Next level content. Let's go. Content 2.0. But if you want to take a couple seconds, one of the things that I love about Chris and what he's doing is putting out a lot of content, a lot of thought leadership as a whole. He does a lot of his own sessions. I don't mind you sharing. Hey, I'd love to hear a little bit, background, how you got into First Mover as a whole. But then if you want to share, where people can find some more of your content, things that you're doing, and then we'll jump right after that into, I think what you called ENDCAPS is kind of this way of looking at scoring, awarding people in the industry that are doing great things with content. But a little background would be awesome. Yeah.
No. I'm excited. So to your point, we go way back as practitioner change leaders in the trenches across CPG, leading e-commerce and omnichannel. I had the honor of building up the original and leading teams across Reckitt, Wellness Pet Company, and Kellogg's. Before working at Edge by Essential, which became part of Flywheel, which is now part of Omnicom. So I always like to say it's like the artist formerly known as the many different companies they were. And it was in that role where I actually got to do what I had done in all my other practitioner roles of educating and advising brands. But I got to look at best practices across so many, which is the benefit of being on the other side of the table, and then cross-pollinate a lot of those best practices across. And then right as COVID hit, there was an immense need for both virtual education, but just even next level training and education in customized by category, by function, by level, by market. And so First Mover was somewhat born from that inspiring prompt of a need to move everyone over that change curve. And we've typically referred to ourselves, Oscar Koshubsky and myself, having launched this now almost 5 years ago now. We're coming up on our fifth birthday. We really treated ourselves as like a satellite center of excellence for omni education and change management. A lot of people have been calling us like the upskiller. So our new tagline going into 2025 is upskilling for a change, because it's both for whatever change comes next, but also a lot of upskilling is kind of like meh. I'm not knocking all the people that put a lot of effort into it, but it's just not meeting its needs. And internally, I've sat through a lot of it myself, and there's a real opportunity to change upskilling for a change to be even better for whatever that actual change is. So you can see all the puns thrown in there, but we are all about educating, but from a practitioner lens, right? It's very actionable, customized training and advisory to really help get those dirty jobs done and get you over that change curve, whatever that may be: omni, e-com, retail media, AI, content, all things included. And the ENDCAPS, which we can talk to, is another one of those initiatives to help. And so all of our things, we do things for companies, but we also do a lot in the industry, and all of it is free from a public facing standpoint: events, white papers, research, awards, just so that we can democratize that great knowledge.
Yeah, I love it. A couple of things there. The upskilling side is it's awesome, because the digital teams, what I've seen, especially over the past 6 to 9 months, is there's a trimming down of the number of people that are in those, and people are just like they're in the trenches on a day-to-day basis. They don't have time. They'd have to literally, outside of their 9 to 5, be nonstop learning, right? They just can't. And there's not enough people. I mean, that's what to connect with. I mean, I think that's the other thing is that I really like what you're doing is connecting people, and it's free, right?
Yeah,
Those are the two things that on the BWG Connect side, that's what we focused on as well is, I mean, it's all free to brands, right? The networking, the knowledge sharing, the connections, the conversations, the advisory sessions, whatever it might be, it's just free to the brands as far as the events go as a whole. So really appreciate
that
it.
point. That doesn't negate the quality, because we had been brands as well and want the quality to be exactly what we would have sought after. But that doesn't mean it has to cost an arm and a leg to go or anything in many cases. So there's already enough barriers. How do I get to that too long didn't read TLDR version of the thing if you help me go do that?
Long.
So that's really our whole approach. And I know it's yours. So it's always great to combine our forces here.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's jump into content. So one of the things that I was talking to Lauren over at the Digital Shelf Institute, and mutual friend of ours, and we're bringing up content. And she was like, "Hey, chat with Chris because we're doing some really cool stuff." And so then we got to catching up last week, and it was all around ENDCAPS. And I immediately go to traditional, CPG, ENDCAPS displays, aisle interrupters, whatever it might be. And you're like, whoa, nope, not those kind of ENDCAPS. But if you want to walk through what you're doing around what ENDCAPS, what you're calling this kind of program that you're rolling out, would be awesome. And then we can kind of dive into, from a content aspect, like what should people be thinking about?
No, that's great. Yeah, no, so very, very excited. Lauren has been one of our judges as part of the ENDCAPS. So the ENDCAPS was born out of I would say, a void or a black hole in this space for digital merchandising / PDP brand store awards, right? There's an abundance of advertising and shopper marketing awards, obviously from different, across industries, not just in the CPG retail side. And they're all wonderful, right? And I mean, obviously there's coveted recognitions of all of the great work, but then there's been millions of dollars and thousands of people and agencies that have gone into like this, to your point earlier, right? Availability is your number one ability, but a very close second after that is your story, right? Assuming you're available with a product to sell, how are you story selling that product, right? And so the content piece, I think for so many of us, right, has been such a long journey. And maybe we took ourselves for granted a little bit. Like there's so much value and leadership that's pumped into making ourselves retail ready and conversion ready and compelling. But I think there's just been so much work put into just getting like, am I complete? Am I hitting my digital shelf analytics tool scorecards? Am I hitting the Target and the Walmart and the Sam's Club content scores? Is it accurate, right? Is it feeding in real time when we make an update? Like there's just so many like blocking and tackling it sometimes. And I don't say this for everybody, but sometimes that's more for as you said, the lean team can only just get that in place and sometimes don't have enough time to go back. Like, how could I make this even more compelling, right? It looks good on surface level. A shopper is getting the basic things they need, but how do we take it to that next level? And so when we're walking the shelves for all the different content and trainings and things we're pulling together, it's always amazing to us how, it's like, oh, this beauty company is doing this really cool thing that none of the other beauty companies are doing, but actually it's applicable to food companies, or, electronics is ahead of a lot of other categories, but they're doing something that, that the Bev Alc or the healthcare space could actually borrow as a strategy, right? To make their story, they're really treating their product page on a Best Buy or on an Amazon, like, from an electronic standpoint, like it's micro website, right? So how do we do the same? So there've been a lot of those like kind of ahas along the way. And then we realized that plus that black hole of awards was like, well, how do we create an awards program that celebrates best practices, but also educates on best practices? I'm sure, Aaron, you've been in awards before, which just like, let's celebrate the winners. And you're like, yeah. And then they don't tell you how they won. Like it's just implied like, oh, it was 360. Like it was comprehensive end to end. They use words like that without ever actually telling me, well, what made it end to end? What made that 360 so much better than other 360 programs? So the same idea for PDPs, we hear a lot like, oh, that's a great PDP. Why? Beyond the obvious, right? But beyond completeness, or it had a keyword in the title, like some basic stuff. So we wanted to overcome that eye roll effect when you hear content or PDP. You're like, gosh, no, not again. let's bring you some really cool things that everybody's really doing and maybe validate what you're doing and add something else. So we launched the ENDCAPS. What's cool about it, just to give you a little more context, we've got it's an independent, unbiased industry platform to elevate those winners and finalists from which we choose the winners, right, in each wave, and then to educate with playbooks and best practices, give you all those public available tips and tricks so you can go to that next level with your PDPs. And the methodology evolves over time because obviously what the bar is, and especially with AI and all these things, is going to change. So we want to make sure it's flexible. But basically, every 2 months, we roll out a different mega category so that we can spotlight winners in grocery or in healthcare or in beauty so that everyone gets a spotlight. It's not like we try to tackle all of it at one time in the year and then you hear nothing else on best practices all year. It's an annual program. We have 6 waves. We've started in the US with Walmart, Target, and Amazon pages just for similarity and capabilities on the retail side. And it covers the bulk of a lot of people's sales. But we have already been asked by other markets to launch in Europe and Canada and Mexico. There's been a lot of like, why didn't you do us? We have to start somewhere, right? So, but we've got a panel of partners and judges. There's very objective criteria that goes into scoring hundreds of different touch points to score. And then we started with our grocery one, which just actually happened last week, our Grocery Awards and Insight Summit. We had over 70 food and beverage manufacturers nominate PDPs. It's completely free. It takes 2 minutes to nominate. So for any category that's open, it's really easy. I can name the 2 companies that didn't submit. And the only reason they didn't submit is because they didn't know about the program because it was new. So I want to give them a break. It wasn't that they didn't think it was a good idea. They were like, oh my gosh, I missed the deadline. And we're going to have grocery again next year, actually, and align the announcement and the event around grocery shop so that people can attend virtually, but we'll also have a reception at grocery shop too. So the whole point of this is, again, to celebrate these really cool best practices, but actually give you those tip by tip breakdown of like, you can literally borrow this because it's not a proprietary thing, right? We wouldn't give away people's real secrets, but anything that you can see from a public facing perspective is something you can borrow with pride. Everyone should be borrowing it with pride. And so we're really pumped about this. We've done the grocery one for 2024 that kicked it off, but we've got healthcare, household and baby, beauty, pet, grocery again, and bev alc all next year. We may add some other categories just based on immediate interest from everybody out there. So it's really exciting.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to the basics. I guess what I would want to get into is like, what are you seeing? Like, so you had the first round, like, why did they win? Because I agree with you wholeheartedly around the content piece, but like, then how often do people have to be updating, right? It's not a one-time thing.
No.
Right. You have to constantly be tweaking. I mean, even Amazon, on that standpoint, like it's reading how often you're touching the content. The tough thing is people don't necessarily know, number one, best practices to get started with. So that means you're slow, you're hesitant to start because you don't know currently if what you're touching is good or not. And there's some cool people out there like, Spencer over at Detail Page and what he's built is doing some cool stuff. I just had Max from eContent AI. He's doing some really cool stuff. But I mean, people want to know what to touch, how to touch it, and what's going to get the biggest benefit. And man, that's a lot of work.
It is. And I want to disclaim too, because there's some nuances to this as well. So when we audit all the PDPs, and we'll continue to do this, but again, it'll evolve a little bit as we continue to mature the methodology and the bar keeps rising. So again, it's not perfect yet, but there's a reason no one has done this to date because it was really hard because there's so many factors to your point. But completeness is a feat in and of itself. I mean, that's like Sisyphus trying to push the rock up the hill because it's changing as you've made it halfway up the hill. And you've got to like, do I go backwards and then redo it and then do it? Or do I publish it and then I come back and I start again? It's crazy. But completeness, there is at least a quantitative element to completeness, right? Because whether we're using, any one of the digital analytics tools out there to measure, do I have 6 images? Are they the correct ones as a source of truth to a Salsify or a Syndigo, right? I mean, like I can measure some of the, like, what character count do I have in my title? Is it, and then also doing that vis-a-vis the retailer, right? Now, we should always defer at least pull a grain of truth from whatever scorecard a retailer might be scoring you on. There's a partnership value to that you did what they need you to do. Usually it's some of the basics, but it could also be something based on their algorithm, right? Because there are some nuances to even just like character count and, presence of one type of content that can make sure you show up higher in like a Walmart search algorithm and whatnot. But so there does need to be a retailer filter to some of this too, but just at a high level across all retailers. I mean, there's some basic table stakes to completeness. By all means, there's a whole science that Spencer and others are figuring out on that SEO, but also that AIO, right? Of like optimizing for an AI search engine that would pull you up. That's going to keep evolving. So we're going to keep trying to measure around that as well. To date, though, there's still a lot of brands that don't even include a keyword or like a consistent keyword, right? To have the right density and the right breadth of keywords in their content, right? And again, the detail page tool that Spencer's launched does a really nice job of auditing that. Having got to see myself, I wish I had that in my past life because we would have kicked some royal butt. But where it gets, it's more of that art piece though. Because there's a science to this and then there's an art. And that's the part where like, I think sometimes I want to speak for everybody out there because I know there's a lot of people that are doing this. And sometimes I did it, but I couldn't influence the change fast enough, right? But am I auditing this as a shopper, right? Can I be a shopper of one? Can I find a shopper of one or few, even ideally statistically significant sample size would help, to review this page for its actual shoppability, right? Because one simple little rubric I kind of use, and so there's 4 questions I usually use when I'm looking at a page for a category. First, it's like, who am I supposed to be talking to? What unique target audience should I be targeting? Everyone wants to be inclusive of everyone because we never want to exclude anyone. And I agree, I don't want to exclude anybody. But if a beauty product for someone that is not me is talking to me, then they have the wrong target audience, right? Because yes, I always like to pick on L'Oreal because they do an amazing job at everything in beauty. But like, there are a number of their products that are really not designed for me. You cannot make me more beautiful. I've achieved the apex of beauty, right? Or actually, I can't be fixed, right? Like at this point, I'm on the Benjamin Button plan, but I'm not actually getting younger. So, but the idea being though that it's okay to be exclusive because you're not saying no, you can't buy. You're saying, Aaron, you're the person I'm talking to, and you actually represent a rather large profile or persona, but I'm going after you just the way we target with our media. So it's who am I talking to? What do they need to know as a types of content? What about this, carbonated beverage do they need to know versus this mascara versus this laundry detergent, right? So some simple science pieces. Then it's the how am I telling you that story? And then also, who else is doing that better, right? Because there's always that competitive element for why you might have everything really amazing, but you're losing search rank because somebody else is converting over you, right? So, but within that, how you're telling the story, there are simple questions. It's like 4 quick questions, right? It's what is it? So when I'm looking at content or bullets or description, what is that product? Is it for me? I.e., who am I talking to? Does it work? And what else do I need to know about the product, right? And a lot of brands have the wrong order of the story, right? So it's like, what is it? Laundry detergent. Is it for me? Try all of our other products as well. That's not the next message, right? It's the next message would have been, do you have really tough sports stains from all your active, your intense, weightlifting activities? Well, yes. Well, it cleans that. Does it work? It's the #1 recommended laundry detergent for athletes. I'm just making this up. Then, oh, by the way, we have all these other products and it's sustainable and all these other things. So it sounds simple, but even in like an order of a carousel of images, 12 images, 8 images, a lot of people have the wrong order and it's not telling that story simple enough. So I'll pause there because I know there's a lot we can unpack, but it's that story selling order that's really, really critical.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's building in more time that people don't have. And I think that's the tough thing, the question that people have to answer. And then, I think the answer is yes. Is it worth the extra time to do it? Is the question at hand. Because again, people are short on time. They're being asked to do more than they've ever been asked to do before. And again, like I was mentioned earlier, that's a lot because what's the consolidation that's taken place over the past 6 to 9 months in the digital departments. That's, predominantly hit the mid-sized to large market cap companies, and really big in the CPG space. It just has. CPG and electronics has taken the biggest hit in the team size. And so it's almost, then if I'm prioritizing, if I go back to my project management days, it is, it's walking through those, but I need to do that before I even start doing anything, right? Like, I'm going to upload images. Well, what is the methodology behind uploading images, and what do I have to have instead of just getting it all done? Right.
So no, Aaron, you brought up a great question. So I know people are time starved because, to be fair, we're time starved and we're not even. And we have a team, but we're still a lean, mean fight machine, right? But we're all in the same boat together. I totally get it. I think the same advice that's always given back to me is we might be overthinking sometimes how much work, at least just the initial we don't even have to make it 100% better. If we're 1% better than our competition, we win. Like, maybe not if we're way behind them, it might take a few weeks or months to get back up, but just improving your conversion, like 0.2% could be 0.2% better than your competition. And that's what starts to make that incremental compound effect over time. But the short answer is it can be extremely worth your time, because even just, and what I like to do is, like, all the different criteria that we break down is kind of like how we audited pages, how the judges scored, tips and tricks and real examples of the brands that not even all the winners were doing. I think that was one really interesting key takeaway is many brands were doing a lot of the best practices. No brand was doing all of them. And even when I say all of them, I'm not even saying you had to be an A++ perfect score valedictorian of your class. They weren't even necessarily getting an A-. And I don't mean that because the winners weren't amazing. To be fair, the best in class is still probably a B+ because of all the things we could have learned from each other. But that being said, it is highly worth it, because in the same way that we've prioritized, and it's gone back to, like, where do you start? If I have 1,000 SKUs or 100 SKUs, and I'm not the fortunate small brand who might not have a lot of resources but only have 10 to worry about, where do I start? Well, you go, it's your like 80-20 rule, right? I remember, like, my top 25 or my top 50 SKUs made up a significant share of my sales. So while I don't want to exclude all my rest of my portfolio, I've got a long tail, start with the big one, right? Hey, my Monday morning actions, right? My bi-weekly digital shelf walk, which literally can take me the same amount of time as it would take me to drive to a physical store to do an actual physical store walk. I can pick one thing and walk that shelf on my top seller. And then if I could make that, and again, we were looking at top sellers, right? The nominated best PDPs of a lot of these amazing companies who were awesome PDPs. But even in reviewing those, you're like, ooh, you have all the info. And if you just swapped that order, your story's like, so obviously you might want to A/B test that, make sure it really, how much more. But, like, it does, to your point, Aaron, there's a lot just to get it to that point of is it ready to be optimized? Not first it's complete, then can it be optimized to be compelling? The beauty is a lot of these pages already were complete and maybe even round 4 or 5 optimized. How do we do round 6? And you also asked a really important question: how often should brands be updating content? Obviously, in a perfect world, it'd be real time, but that's not possible in every case. But I would generally say it would be nice to say, how do I revisit this at a minimum quarterly to get, maybe I can divide and conquer across a team to audit the pages for specific criteria. Hopefully we can offer a rubric of things, a checklist to look at, so that it's not all on one person, but that way we can really assess next level opportunities. And again, start with those top SKUs. And then a lot of times, as you know, one hero SKU actually represents a whole line extension of other SKUs that then it can kind of be cascaded down to those learnings. So sometimes you can actually knock out one SKU and capture 10% of your sales because the long tail off that hero. So there's some, but I always like to say, you don't have to change it quarterly or monthly. It's review it monthly. So at least you know what to bucket as the change on a quarterly or biannual basis. So semi-annual basis, I guess.
Awesome. Other, like, areas of focus that people should be thinking about. I know, you talked a little bit about, you said AI, I'm thinking like a Rufus. We'll see how that works out. That's, it throws in, kind of a curveball into the whole mix. I'm also thinking like mobile
Sure.
ready content as a whole. Like, how are these things like fitting into how should people be thinking about it?
No, that's a great one. So mobile ready again also is one of those like, well, yeah, obviously. But then the question is, where are we looking at our digital shelves at work on our laptops? Where are we not looking at the digital shelf when we're actually at home watching reruns of The Office and shopping, right? Oh, on my phone, right? So sometimes it's just remember, walk the way your shopper, right? Walk like an Egyptian, right? Walk like, the song, right? Walk the way your shopper is walking. And then and again, sometimes the content is, but it's interesting. Like some of our winners had these beautiful mobile hero ready images, like as their main image. Knowing that some people, especially in food and beverage, just add to cart right from the search results. They don't need, especially in grocery, right? If I already know I want Oreos, I don't need to research the Oreos. I want them, right? But you still have to be compelling on a hero image, and different retailers allow different levels of hero image, right? Amazon is the most restrictive out of those three top retailers, but they do allow you to have like product outside of pack. Target allows those GS1 standard ones that with the little call out, the highlighted one, and then Walmart right now is the most I would say the least restrictive and allows the most creativity. And I mean, we saw some really cool ones like Infamil from Wreck-It had these beautiful hero images that not only told you, the size, but how many bottles it would make of the baby formula, even put the endorsement of like the baby list endorsed, the industry endorsement on the image. And the only watch out was the way that Walmart's overlays of like the zoom in and zoom out sometimes cover up some of that on the shelf. So it's beautiful by itself, but then we always have to go back to, well, how does the retailer's site changing? And is that negatively impacting or changing where I should show hero content? So it's mobile readiness. It's making sure your bullets have like a short bullet at the very beginning. So if I only read the first 3 words, I know what the bullet meant without having to read the rest. Another one that's really two other areas, Aaron, that I know we were talking to before we started prepping for this was social integration, right? So not all retailers like Target let you include the official Instagram content, but that doesn't mean you can't weave in reviews and influencer content and whatnot. And those obviously matter. You can even weave those into the claims and actually have the influencers, if it's legally approved, claiming the benefit of the product. So you kind of double whammy your content with social endorsement. It can be, I would say the other one I have a lot of heart for is really weaving in category management. How do I design my content for specific types of growth, right? So if I want new brand buyers, I need to tell a story that would convince someone in the category to convert. Not just anyone to convert, but a new undecided person, right? Or someone, a competitive shopper who might defect to me. Or if I need to bring people into the category, I'm going to have to educate people on, well, why should they take multivitamins? Or what do these different SPF levels of sunscreen mean? I've got to actually take the more of a category leader approach. If I want to build baskets, I've got to actually look at ways I can cross-sell my portfolio or build, do recipe content, right? And some of these little things that some brands do, but not for that reason. I think there's a huge opportunity to be very intentional about designing for incrementality, whether it be new occasions, basket building, new types of buyers, lapse buyers, things like that. So these are, and this sounds like a lot of stuff, but if you have this checklist, even just qualitatively, and you looked at your page and you're like, hey, it's my quarterly check-in. I've audited my top 10 SKUs, which make up 30% of my sales right on Walmart or on Amazon. And I'm looking through and like, we did this very same thing for all of these top SKUs. Where does this measure up, right? Oh, it's awesome on shopper centricity. But it doesn't have the social piece yet. And it's not really leaning into like basket building, which is our biggest growth opportunity. See, there's your opportunities. Then you can test and learn with that. Maybe try it on one SKU, then add it to the other ones, right? So that's the approach. Is you have to eat an elephant one bite at a time, but you do have to start eating. So, or otherwise the elephant is always there, and an elephant never forgets, as we've been reminded in our past TV and movie lore there. So
yeah, if I'm gonna pull one like key takeaway from this is the longest time people knew content is very, very important. And it was one of those things that they get everything up and going and they go back and they tweak over and over again. They might relook at it. They might use a tool. It is this idea around planning for content from the beginning. And it's going to be more time intensive at the beginning, but it's going to save you tenfold that amount later on. And from that, I mean, when we think about content right now, especially around imagery, and I love what you were saying is like, what are you doing with your content? It kind of goes along who you're talking to, but what is that audience, from the new buyers, like the old buyers, returning, you need to build this out because you're breaking into a new category. You need to explain to them what's going on. You need this holistic view of content at the top, product by product. And that content then also needs to be broken down at the same time into the different, not just retailers, right? Obviously, you're looking at Amazon, you look at Walmart, Target, and I'm talking CPG right now, but it could be any of your retailers who they
there's
are.
so many other retailers, obviously, that matters.
But then when you brought up UGC, but it's also your meta campaigns. It's your TikTok campaigns. It is this, taking a step back where I'm going to create content, at a high level, because the other thing is it's so expensive to create in the first place, right? At least the images are. That I can see this. I know people are going to put that in place, but there is almost a need for like a VP of content, a content team that is producing this at scale. And the tough thing is, the only way you're going to show that it was worth it is in 3 months when all of your product sales are up, right? And you're beating out the competition. Maybe you've won every ENDCAPS award for three years straight.
No, well,
that's like a key takeaway for me is like, everybody knows content is important, but we need to think about it from a high level, the same level we're thinking about paid media. What are all the avenues that I'm going to be spending paid media on? The retail media networks, streaming TV, all of that falls into content, because at the end of the day, where people's brains break is when content is not streamlined. It doesn't tell, to your point, doesn't tell the same story over and over again, where I'm getting 2 different signals from the same product, from, same brand, same product, and it's treating me different.
Right. I saw a media campaign and I was so compelled, and then I got to the page and it sounds like it was talking to somebody else. You know? And to your point, Aaron, two awesome builds on your awesome point here, because I think we're great minds think alike. So I know we're brothers from another mother here. Is we have a pillar of criteria that we didn't add to this set of ENDCAPS because it's a little bit harder to measure, and it actually requires more than the PDP. And we call that like full funnel, right? Full funnel content. Because to your point, we do a lot of retail media, like how to write a brief, right? And like it sounds silly, like some of these like soft and hard skills that aren't just for e-commerce and omnichannel, but actually have to be reintroduced because they are now a little different in terms of the practices we use versus the principles. So, but we do a lot of retail media, like end-to-end training and advising. But point being is, and even with agencies, right? And some of the leading retail media agencies, they have teams that have just all learned from different backgrounds, and they don't have all one holistic approach. So we've done a lot of this, but the point being is, in the same way that I would brief a media campaign, right? It's like, what's my overall growth objective? Who does that mean I need to reach? What behavior do I want them to change? How would I measure success? And what KPIs will I need to read, and at what cadence to know that I was successful, right? All those different like multi-part objective questions that I need in a brief to set up a really effective campaign. I need to do that all the way down to content. So there's a full funnel content element that we will be adding in the future to ENDCAPS. It's just, it requires a couple more touch points beyond just submit your PDP URLs, right, at different retailers. But the other thing that you said that is really important, and this is why I challenge all you leaders of change out there. I call you first movers, whether you join our events or not. We love you out there for leading change. You are on the front of the curve, whether you think you are or not. Is the things that we are talking about are not really new or mind-blowing, but they're things that no one formally owns. And that's the problem. Like, we're ahead of our time because the things aren't owned by like the senior the senior leader, right? To be fair, who really owns omnichannel? The CEO? Like, do they go do that? No. After it goes down, then it breaks up into functional, groups, and then it like everyone owns omni, but not really all omni, right? To your point, who owns content, full funnel content? Nobody, right? And I do realize at some point you have to have someone design the content. You have the functions, and specialists, but we're missing like who owns omni category management and omni-channel profitability, right? You might say, well, finance or category. Yeah, but not really, because they weren't invited to the table until recently, right? So it is this silo breakdown opportunity. But my point to anyone out there, if you said, but I'm not the owner of all of it, how do I change? Push it up, push it out, talk about it. Like, if you may not make change overnight, but your attempt to do better and you to bring insights is only going to help cross-pollinate and start the spark of people thinking about like the what if we did this better or what if we tried that. And your argument, if somebody says, why are you doing that? Because I want to be 1% better every day. Don't you? That if they say no, you can slap them. And then you should probably resign immediately. But like slap them. Like nobody's going to say, no, I don't want to be better. And you're saying, I'm just trying to be a little bit better every day. And this is how I go about doing that. I have some ideas for how we could all do this better. But in my function and my level right now, what I can influence is this. I'd love your support if you'd be helping push this up the chain and across the organization. But this is what I can do today. So always start with yourself because you can do a lot more than you think you can.
Yeah. I mean, the crazy thing is it just keeps getting harder and harder. I mean, there are new tools coming out, right? And what I found is what's really cool. These tools, they're truly like machine learning AI. They're not the old where, it was $20,000 a month and it was really just, data exported, hands on keyboards.
Right. It wasn't just a descriptive tool, right? Now we got diagnostic tools. We've got arguably prescriptive tools.
Yeah. And it's not just like hands on keyboard overnight pumping out, the mechanical Turk. This is literally, we're talking $1,500, $2,000 a month. Like we're seeing some real AI ML platforms come out that are, enable you to do your job better. At the end of the day, a couple of things for all of those models are you need a strategy, right? And you need data, and you need then use the strategy to organize the data and then have that pull into any of these tools that are coming out. Again, more time. No,
but that's what I'm trying to get at too. And I agree. Like, yes, it's easy for me when I'm not in your role today because I was in the past and I had teams and challenges and, we have to get ready for a business review to discuss results that we can't deliver because we could have been doing the work that would have delivered the results, but instead we're telling you about the results we can't deliver. You get that the craziness when you're a lean team, when you're constantly doing the internal meetings and trying to actually activate the external programming. But point being is start with one thing, right? All you need is a case study with one, right? And yes, maybe you'd say, oh, but that means I'm gonna have to do it outside of work. Okay, spend 20 minutes, pick one thing, audit your top SKU, bring the ideas back. Obviously, wherever you can influence it, try to get it in as let's do an A/B test on this, or let's try this. Obviously, you're going to get some learnings. Maybe the idea you had wasn't the best idea, or it didn't really work for your category, or whatever it may be. But do one thing, and then if it works, then you can say, guys, we could do this for all of our SKUs. I just can't do it all by myself, right? Oh my God, well, we want that. Everybody wants the incrementality right now. So the resources will flow where the growth starts to be seen, right? So give them one, it's a desert. Give them one little oasis that starts to grow. And then they're going to want more of those, especially if you're like, I'm the magician. I can give you a lot more of those out there if we did this, right? So it's not, again, but you don't have to completely optimize your entire portfolio tomorrow, right? You're not going to. Even if you had all the insights, you wouldn't be able to activate all of them. But do apply, even with all these amazing tools, apply that little bit of human like sense checking, right? We decided when we planned our content that we needed 12 types of information for this category to help sell the product. And you're like, yes, science, check. And they're all live and they're all accurate. They're all legally approved. Everybody, and they're branded. They're all wonderful. Is this telling a story though, in the order that they're in? Oh no, actually that doesn't even make sense. Why are we starting with the flavor? That isn't what people want. That was just a nice to have at the end. Oh, well, you had all the info. It was just a matter of like within 3 seconds, you could say, what is it? Is it for me? Does it work? What else do I need to know, right? That simple rubric would answer half the shopper-centric story selling questions that we're not addressing today. And that could take a few minutes. So start with your top SKUs, start with something simple, audit it, optimize it, get the case study, bring it back. That starts rolling with resources, right? And I always like to do math, though. There was a really great Ann Boyles, who has been across a couple different organizations, but many years ago when she was at one of our Edge hackathons, I remember very distinctly, she walked through a case study of how she had said she didn't have a huge team to focus on optimizing content, but she said, to do what we need to do on this, I backed into the hours that would be needed based on the real hours it takes our team to do it today. And when I counted it up, I was going to need 2 full-time people, and I could show the math. And then she got 2 full-time people because she could show them the benefit of what happened when only the half-time person could do it, what it would take to get the full assortment, and what that ROI might look like. And suddenly she was able to move mountains internally, even though they were all obviously strapped for headcount. So there, work some of that magic, right? Because that magic isn't actually wizardry. It's just strategic case study building, get a quick win, leverage it for a bigger win, right? And then eventually you're not the only one doing it. The whole organization is helping you do it.
Yeah. Awesome. So we're getting close on time here. Like really quick, like, I don't know if there's like 30 seconds of like key takeaways.
Yeah, no, I think, I know we've kind of been speckling them all through. I would just say, we really like to treat Amanda Wolf, of One Space and Flywheel fame, and she's one of our board members and our contributors, and one of our judges on the ENDCAPS, because she's got great expertise here. I always like to borrow with pride. She always said, the digital shelf is a process, not a project, right? I think anyone in digital shelf knows that. Sometimes we can't help but have the company treat it as a project. I want to evolve it from process to practice, because process sounds kind of, unless you're a project manager, some people love that, but it's a practice, right? Because it's kind of like medicine, like it's both science, but also there's a little bit of art to it. And there's also just a lot of experience to it, right? That just takes some time to learn. It's not perfectly scientific and mathematic and everything boxes up, right? Because every single SKU, every single person, their health is a little different, right? So we have to, and it's dynamic in real time. So I like to think digital shelf is a practice, not a project. We don't have to fix it though overnight. It's just about start with the big, fewer, bigger, better, get the case study, walk through, and all of our best practices from each one of our ENDCAPS, and those winners will be available. We're going to be publishing our recording of the summit and the initial playbook for everybody. It's free to download. Use that as a starting place. Just use those rubrics as like, I'm going to walk the shelf for 20 minutes and I'm going to see what I see. And I'm going to see how would I score each one of those areas, and who looks like they might be doing better in my category, maybe even outside of my category. Screenshot them, save them, parking lot them, bring them back to the team next time you have a review. See what you can activate in the short term, build the case, do it again. And then if that 1% compound turns into some significant improvement over time, and then you'll be an ENDCAPS winner or whatever other recognition is out there. You'll be able to, but you'll know in your heart you've been doing what you meant to do, which is take everything you do to that next level.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Chris, thanks so much for your time today. Thanks for agreeing to jump on another episode here of the Digital Deep Dive. And with that, I think we're going to wrap this one up. Thanks everybody for listening in. Thanks again, Chris. You're awesome.